There we go.
So I want to welcome everybody here to our Twitter 101, our voices tweeting together, project that you, Joe, is doing in partnership with OFU PAC, Ohio Families United for Political Action and Change. Did I get that right? Great. And we are part of the Our Voices Together coalition, specifically to address anti-protest legislation that's making its way through the State House. But we know that that Twitter is a platform that we can all use for raising our voices on all sorts of issues. And this is very much a 101 sort of thing. I was telling Richie and Emily earlier, I want to be confident enough that I can post pictures of what my cats are doing. And then I'll feel confident about, poking at some political stuff. So watch out, internet. There's going to be some cat stuff on Twitter coming soon from me. But I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Richie, and he's going to take us through this. So thank you all for being here this evening.
Thank you so much, Pastor Hank, and thanks everyone for joining. I'm really happy to be here tonight and to be able to talk with you, and hopefully won't be it'll be the first of hopefully many times that we can get together and talk through using technology and leveraging social media to get your voice amplified and to be a part of the conversation with the issues and movements that you care about. Like Pastor Hank mentioned, if we can get you, if you're confident enough to post cat content and cat photos on Twitter, then you're rolling already, and you're already ahead of the game. So once you're there, you'll be able to just keep on going. Emily and I, before I kind of get into more specific stuff, just kind of conceptually, and this is because Emily and I have spoken about it quite a bit as we think about how to amplify OFU's OFU PAC's message and get it out there in a broader way. We talk about what it takes to get comfortable actually putting your voice out there on social media when you're talking about some pretty heavy stuff sometimes, and that's a big hurdle for a lot of people to jump, and myself included. There are times even when, and I've been using Twitter for a long time, that I'll even hesitate a lot to say, okay, well, do I want to say this way? Do I want to say this at all? Is this, idea properly formulated and thought out before I tweet anything? And so I understand, especially when you're getting started, and you may not be as comfortable, just how big of a hurdle that is to get over and be able to say, okay, I'm comfortable with my own voice and I'm comfortable with what I'm saying, and comfortable enough that I'm good to just put it out there in the world and be a part of that conversation. So don't worry if early on you wind up feeling a little hesitant and a little bit shy when you're out there and you have things you want to say and you know how you want to say them, but you may not quite get to that point just yet where you're going to type it out on a tweet and actually send it out. Don't get discouraged. I know it's easy to get that way. Sometimes I get that way. I feel like, well, I really have a lot to say about this issue, and if I don't say anything, then I get a little upset with myself. It's okay to be like that. I don't ever give myself an easy time of it, but I want to make sure that's said before we even get into any of the more specific stuff. That it'll be a little bit of a journey for everybody, and a bit of a path to take to become comfortable in your own voice and be able to put that voice out there. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen really quickly, and then we will take a look here at OFU PAC's Twitter page so that I could talk through some of the really basic stuff. I'm gonna kind of take you through this from the point of view is like this is the first time you're opening Twitter and you're taking a look at stuff and you've not really engaged or jumped in before. So when you create your Twitter account, it'll ask you for your what we call Twitter handle, and that's what this is here, the @ symbol, and then that OFU PAC is our handle. And what it basically is, you know, if you have something specific that if you're working with an organization that you want to represent, it would be probably, in this case, we use the acronym of the organization because it was the actual name was just too long. There's a limit on the number of characters that you could use. It's something like 27 or 25 characters that you can use for your Twitter handle. More often than not, you'll just use your name. That's what I have as my Twitter handle. And most people will just use some variation of their name. And that'll be your Twitter handle. It'll be attached when you create your account. You'll choose your handle, and you'll also drop in your email address. So that'll be what you use to log into Twitter, is either your email address or your handle, and then the password that you set up. So once you create that account, you'll be dropped on a page that looks kind of like this, except there won't be any photos or anything there for you. It'll be your page that you can then you edit to add in a photo of yourself or some kind of avatar. That'll be what people see in the Twitter feed when they're actually seeing everybody's content. Next to the individual tweets will be that photo, that avatar, and the Twitter handle. Yeah, Emily.
Richie, what's an avatar?
Yeah, an avatar is just it's your profile photo, for lack of a better term. It's just a photo of you, and that'll be the primary photo that people kind of associate with that account. So it should be a photo of you. So this would be on your profile page. And if you ever want to send that to anybody, or if you ever want to go back and look at it, or find a quick place for you to log in, it would just be twitter.com/ and then whatever your handle is. So in this case, it's OFUPAC. If I'm looking at my own personal Twitter account, it would be twitter.com/ Richie Alisea. And that's also my Twitter handle. So you can always send your page directly to people and be able to find that page really easily by just going to that URL. I usually will keep I'll usually create a bookmark in Google Chrome or Safari or whatever browser I'm using with different accounts that I'm working with, so that I can always find them really, really quickly. You'll also add in a quick bio. If it's an organization, it's just the description of what you're doing with that organization, the mission statement of the organization. For mine, I just kind of, I'll actually just go ahead and open up my own Twitter page. So in this case, I just put like what I do. I'm a veteran political strategist, radical centrist, and my company, I also teach at University of Akron, and I'm a communications director at OFUPAC. So that'll be depending on what you want to share with people. You can be as broad or as narrow as you want. You can be as you could do everything under a pseudonym if you wanted to. You don't have to use your real name if you don't want to. If you want to use a nickname or some kind of nom de plume or something like that, you can do that. It's totally up to you. That is one thing also that you'll find a lot of is tweets that are coming from people that you have no clue who they actually are in real life. And we'll take a look at what the feed looks like in a second. But yeah, that was one thing I neglected to say up front, is that you don't have to actually use your real name if you aren't quite comfortable doing that just yet. You can use any name you want, or any kind of persona that you want. You shouldn't impersonate someone else though. That's a no-no. You would also add your bio here. If you have a website or a website that you want people to be directed to if they visit your profile, you could put that here too. And then this would be just your the content that you tweet out would also appear on this page. If you have a new profile, there won't be anything here, but you'll be able to edit all of this profile information, like your bio and your name and things like that. So now we'll talk a little bit about the Twitter terminology. Some of it is a little obscure and kind of weird, and it's hard to really understand what a lot of it means. But there are just a couple of main terms that you're going to see a lot of, and it's good to know as you're kind of easing into it what all of them mean. I already talked about your Twitter handle, so that would be, like in this case here, electary would be the Twitter handle. If you're on your computer and looking through your Twitter feed, you would be able to actually, in this case, just hover over somebody's Twitter handle if it appears in a tweet and be able to follow them, or go to their page and see who they are and see if you want to follow them. I do this a lot. It's a good way, once you start, once you've chosen the first people that you want to follow on Twitter and you start seeing those tweets from them on a regular basis and in real time, whenever they tag, people that I follow tag someone else, it's a pretty good indication that that person may be someone who I'm interested in learning more about. So I'll frequently just kind of go through my Twitter feed and just look for accounts that are mentioned by accounts that I'm following, because more often than not, there will be a reason enough for me to at least be interested in following them and hearing what they have to say. So those are the Twitter handles. Next are hashtags, which are really, they're just terms that that are preceded by a pound symbol. So a pound symbol and a term is basically a way for Twitter to categorize what conversations are going on at any specific time all over Twitter. If you're logged into Twitter on your computer, you could go to this section here, this Explore tab, and you can see that it will, Twitter will automatically sort out the top, what are called trending hashtags, which would be the conversations that are being had most often all across Twitter. And then it also will specify some of these conversations based on accounts that you follow, based on what city you're in or what state you're in. And this is another good way both to explore and find new accounts to follow and new topics to follow, but it's also a good way, which we'll talk about in a minute, it's a good way to get involved in these conversations and build your own following and build the following for your organization. It's a good way to find out exactly what hashtags are corresponding with specific conversations, so that you can find out, for example, if we're talking about what's going on in Ukraine right now, we would look for one of a number of different hashtags that are out there that people are talking about the situation in Ukraine under. Some of it might just be pound or hashtag Ukraine. Some might be pound or hashtag Russia or NATO. There are a whole lot of different topics in this case that you can search for or find under the Explore tab that would take you to these conversations that are going on. You'll also be able to look at, as I mentioned, the trending hashtags, the trending conversations that are going on. And you'll see they kind of vary. Some of them make a lot of sense if depending on what we're paying attention to. Some of them make a little less sense, even to me. I'm not sure. I don't know anything about this number 2 trending topic, but some people do, obviously. But you could see there's, in this case, Ukraine-Russian war, a whole bunch of other varied topics. And then it also splits off amongst some of the overarching topics like news and sports and entertainment. And depending on what you want to look for, you can always search and take a look under the Explore tab and under, in this case, like the news tab or the sports tab to check out what's going on. It's a good way to find out any breaking news also. I generally will use Twitter as more of a news app than my actual news app on my phone or on my computer. And that has everything to do with what accounts I've chosen to follow and what sort of trending issues and trending topics I will look at on a daily basis, because I'll frequently, and it's funny because my wife has all of her notifications turned on her news app on her phone, and she will, we'll be sitting in bed or watching TV or something, and her phone will buzz and she'll say, "Oh, this is happening right now." And I say, "Well, I knew about that like 3 hours ago because it was on Twitter." but the news app is just getting around to sending those breaking news alerts. If you really want to be kind of ahead of the curve in terms of what's going on in the world and what's going on locally in our state and in the neighborhoods and cities that you're living in, Twitter's a really good resource for that. And it all boils down to how you use Twitter, what you use it for, and the people that you and accounts that you follow. You could very easily end up in a kind of dark, horrible place on Twitter if you follow the wrong accounts, and if you kind of are looking for that sort of Twitter experience. And if you're not, you don't have to experience Twitter that way. That's one of the really cool things about Twitter, is that it's a lot of it is what you make of it. A lot of it is kind of in your hands in terms of what you want to pay attention to and what you really don't want to pay attention to. And it can kind of be a really useful app and a really useful platform if you just kind of put the little bit of time in at the beginning when you're first getting started to cultivate what it is you see on Twitter. And we'll talk about how to do that. Outside of the hashtags, there are also some other small terms that you'll see. You'll see with every tweet, there are these buttons here. This is where you can engage with tweets on an individual basis. So let's say, you're scrolling through here and you find a tweet that you are interested in. In this case, let's say this tweet. Let's say we want to share it with people that are following us on Twitter. We can click this retweet button, and then you have an option between retweeting and quote tweeting, which seem like they're exactly the same thing. And for the most part, they are. When you hit retweet, what would happen is this tweet would just get sent off to our followers as it is right now, without any changes or anything like that. If we hit quote tweet, and this is what I'll use on my personal account more often than not, and the reason is because I can add my own commentary or my own take on a tweet that I'm sharing. If you retweet content, there's sometimes this misconception that means you agree with what's being said, and using the quote tweet function gives me the opportunity to have my own say on whatever it is I'm sharing. And that way it can add clarification, it can add whatever insight I might want to offer, or any just flippant comment that that I want to add to it. You can also just comment on a tweet. It's called the reply. And this won't be tweeted out directly to our followers, but it will appear underneath this initial tweet as kind of a response to it. The person who tweeted it will get a notification that somebody has commented, and people who follow this, the Phil Stewart in this case, would see that in their feed. People who see it, who subscribe to OFU Pack, would see it sometimes, but not in real time, as if we tweeted. I know it's kind of confusing now when you put it that way, but Twitter kind of decides how and when it's going to show replies in the feed. Whereas if it's a retweet or a quote tweet, it'll just appear chronologically. So if you want people who follow you to definitely see what you're sharing, you'd want to retweet or quote tweet. If you're interested, more interested in just kind of being a part of this conversation around this specific tweet, then you would go for the reply and add your comment there. And then there's this like button, which is, if you're on Facebook, it's pretty much exactly the same as the Facebook like button. All it is just you signifying that you like the content. It doesn't have any other function other than that. You won't add a comment. You won't be sharing this tweet out to anybody. It will show up on your profile that you liked that tweet, but it wouldn't be anything beyond that. So one of the first things, once you get started and once you set up your profile, the first thing that you'll be doing is finding accounts to follow. And this will take, it can take a little bit of time to get to a place where you're following accounts on a regular basis. But Twitter makes it fairly easy to kind of branch out as you start following new accounts. Let's say in this case, we'll go to this account that just popped up in our news feed. And I just clicked it, got to this person's page. He's running for Congress in doesn't say what district, but he's running for Congress. And what I really like, and I'll do this often as well, is I'll look for organizations that I'm interested in, and I'll go to their Twitter profile. And once I hit the follow button, Twitter does this interesting thing where it gives me other accounts that are sort of like the account I just followed, and recommends them to me. And I like that because especially when you're following organizations that you're interested in, it very frequently will pop up with other really relevant organizations that I may not already be following, that I could then follow right off the bat really easily. So once you create your account and you start getting into this process where you're looking for accounts to follow, Twitter makes it pretty easy for you to start with 1 or 2 or 3 accounts that you're following and branch out and find a lot more that are in the same kind of sphere as the accounts you already follow. And through that, you can kind of curate the content that you see in a much nicer way than if you were just kind of going through the Explore tab and just kind of looking through varied conversations that are happening all over Twitter. This allows you to get a lot more localized, a lot more specific, depending on issues you're interested in, and you'll be able to find other accounts that kind of have similar interests as you and the accounts that you're following. This is also really good. And as I said, in my case, I use Twitter very, very often as kind of a news app. This is really good to find local journalists and statewide journalists that I'm really interested in the content that they're writing about. If I just start off with a couple of publications or a couple of journalists, I'm able to branch out and find new writers, new journalists, and new publications that are really interesting to me. And it's a really good way if you're using Twitter in that way to be able to dive in and find a lot of journalists that you may not otherwise be exposed to very easily. So when you're when you log into Twitter, and this will be whether you're on your phone or if you go to the website, this is what you'll see when you log in, and this will be after you follow some accounts. The content will appear in chronological order, and you can change that as well. You can you have the ability to there's this little star icon up in the right hand corner. If you click it, you can actually split it off, so you see where so essentially you have 2 timelines. One is this home timeline, which is sort of similar to how Facebook's news feed works, where there's an algorithm that's choosing content for you regardless of when it was tweeted, and just showing it to you in the order that Twitter thinks would be the most beneficial to you. Then you have the ability to click this latest tweets button, which is usually like my default. I'll usually want to look at just stuff in chronological order. The latest tweets button will give you that option. So you see stuff that the people you follow have tweeted just in the order that they've tweeted it in. That's really good if you're using it for news and you want to get that latest news right when it's happening. This would be the way to do it. So you would basically just, at any time you'd be scrolling through, you'll see that in this example here, Rachel Coyle is retweeting a bunch of stuff. And so we don't follow these accounts like this No Lie with Brian Taylor Cohen, Vote Vets. We don't follow these accounts, but they're appearing in our news feed because Rachel Coyle, who we do follow, retweeted them. So whenever you retweet something, this is how it's going to look to people who follow you on Twitter. it'll say that you retweeted this tweet, and then it'll just show the tweet as is. If there's a quote tweet, which we'll see if we can find, that's what this is. So if you use the quote tweet function, so Shari here quote tweeted, well, she retweeted Natalie James, who quote tweeted Tom Cotton. So there's a little bit of a inception situation there. But so in this case, Natalie James for US Senate quote tweeted Tom Cotton. And so you see Tom Cotton's original tweet appears here, and then the commentary from Natalie James right up here. And then that was retweeted by Shari, who we do follow. And that's why we're seeing this. So there's a lot of layers to it, which can seem really, really confusing. But the real basic stuff is that you want to start off following accounts. I usually will kind of advise, if it's an organization, I'll follow organizations that are in the same space that our organization is operating in. And then I'll follow some journalists, maybe some public officials. And then that will then tell Twitter, okay, these are the kinds of accounts that I'm following that I want to get news from. And so Twitter will be better about recommending new accounts to me that are a lot like those accounts in the first place. And when I start off that way and start off kind of really thinking about what kind of accounts I want to follow, it keeps a new account, whether it's for an organization or a politician that I'm working for, it'll really keep, over the long run, it'll keep us out of the gutter in many ways, where it's very easy to kind of veer off and because everybody is on Twitter, and there are so many different types of Twitter environments, if you will. And there's cross-pollination. So like for me, for example, while I'm very into political Twitter and following journalists and following organizations, I'm also a big baseball fan. So I follow a lot of baseball accounts. And so sometimes it's like worlds colliding when I'm on Twitter, where I have all of this kind of deep, dark political content. And then all of a sudden I just go, I'm scrolling in one Twitter feed, and then stuff is just all about baseball. And so it's very cool in that way, because you can really segment off things in a nice way, so that you can have different experiences every time you log on to Twitter. I had mentioned that we would probably, we'd like to have some more of these conversations. If we have, if we do have more, it would be good for us to go over some more kind of deep dive level stuff, like utilizing Twitter lists that allow you to break your followers off into groups. I'll have lists that are for website development and graphic design, and then another list that's just for Ohio politics, another list that's for national politics, another list that's for people who work on political campaigns, and a whole ton of different lists. So that way, when I log into Twitter, if there's just some stuff I feel like looking at any given time, like let's say I don't want to think about politics tonight, I just want to think about baseball, so I'll go on Twitter and I can go to my list that's just with the accounts that I follow that have to do with baseball. I could just go into that list, and that's the only content I'll see in my Twitter feed. This is the kind of stuff that we would go into a more deep dive on, because there's a lot of different ways that you can cultivate what you see, whether it's through lists or through following hashtags and all of that stuff. But before we get to any of that, it's important to kind of learn the really basic stuff, because that's in many ways the most daunting, is actually getting the account set up and actually getting to the point where you're following new accounts and saying, yeah, I want to see this person's content. Yes, I'm interested in what this organization is doing, and kind of all of that stuff. That's the really big stuff, and the stuff that is the hardest hurdle to jump over. Once you're in there and you're actually doing things like tweeting, which is a lot easier than you'd think. When you log into Twitter on your computer, it looks pretty much the same way. If you're on a phone, there's a little button if you're on your phone that you hit it. I think it's a plus symbol now. It used to be like a quill. Now it's a plus symbol, and you tap that button and it opens up essentially this box here, where you can just type out whatever it is you want to tweet out. Just wait, hello. If you want to add a photo, you could do that here, or a video if you have video. So if you have your cat photos and your cat videos, this would be where you share that. You would click this button. If you're on your phone and you hit that media button, it'll take you right into the Photos app on your phone, so you can select what photos or video you want to share, and then it'll drop it right in to your tweet. You could also search for photos and GIFs to share. You could add emojis, and you can also schedule tweets if you want to if you have a lot that you want to put out there. You can schedule tweets in advance. Probably not there yet. I don't even really schedule my own tweets very much in advance. I'm usually doing it really in the moment as I'm reacting to stuff, or as I have thoughts in my head and stuff that I want to say. Then I'll go into Twitter and I'll tweet it out. If you're managing a Twitter feed for an organization, that's where you'll come into this situation where you're scheduling tweets out. If you're doing it just for you, you're probably not going to use that feature. So I think this is probably a good place to hit pause and kind of open it up for questions and anything else that we can kind of go over, and then we can kind of think about how we want to take the next version of this Twitter 102, if you will.
Richie, thank you. Great job. Donald here.
Hey, Donald.
Question. I see a blue check mark next to some names. What is that, and how do I obtain one?
So yes, that is the age-old question. So as Donald said, there are some people on Twitter that have this blue check mark here. And that's, there we go. So in this case, so some people will have them. I somehow have one. Symbol. So it means, so apparently Twitter believes that I'm notable in government news, entertainment, or some other designated category. In this case, it's because I'm a political consultant and have consulted in a lot of different races. That's so they're saying I'm notable in political consulting or something like that. So you do have to apply for Twitter verification. There's a bit of a process. It actually took me like a year to get to that point where Twitter gave me that little blue check mark. And you have to kind of prove a couple of things, that the account is authentic. So in that case, like that I really am Richie Alisea and that I really am tweeting for myself. Notable, and there are different ways to show that. It could be something like a Wikipedia entry, or your name appearing in news articles or news coverage. And then you have to be active. And so if you hit those three things, theoretically you should be eligible for Twitter verification. Sometimes they can get persnickety about it, and not really tell you why. They'll say, well, you've been verified or you haven't, and they won't give you a reason one way or the other. The first time I put in for verification, they did not verify me, and the second time it just popped up one day that they did, and nothing had changed between the first time and the second time. So there's sometimes no rhyme or reason to it. But everybody is able to apply for verification. Once you have your account set up, you could do that.
Richie, I seen for verification that you actually also need to be notable in a category. Do you have to pick that category, or you just submit the material and they kind of figure it out for you?
Yeah, so you pick like the broad category. So like when I did it, I didn't actually say, hey, I'm notable in government news, entertainment, or anything like that. I just said, there are different categories that they pick. None of them actually is that you're notable. It's like I'm a journalist, or I work for, or I'm a politician. Another one is I am on the executive committee of an organization that's verified. So there are a couple of these like broader categories that you can pick. And then once you get verified within that category, Twitter will just sort you into that notable group.
Thank you so much for that. That's just powerful. I mean, this check mark, it's. I'll
So I've heard. It affects some people, yeah. All right, does anybody else have any questions? I know it's a lot to cover like in one sitting, so it's okay if people are a little overwhelmed.
So Richie, I'm curious if there's a way on Twitter, and I don't know that there's a way necessarily on Facebook to do this, but to check the veracity of who you're following and whether they're really who they say they are, and if this is worth me I don't want to retweet something that
Right.
that is quote unquote fake news, right?
Right. Yeah. So Twitter has some built-in measures. They're not perfect. Just like Facebook, they'll say, well, we have this flag that'll say this might be disinformation or misinformation, and it's not perfect, but Twitter does have that. They ramp it up, especially around election time. They ramped it up with COVID information, and some other likely sources of fake news would be flagged. If somebody is like really openly and blatantly tweeting out misinformation or disinformation at a high level, Twitter will take action like suspending an account or flagging individual tweets. This happened to Donald Trump before he was permanently suspended from Twitter, where his tweets about the election were all being flagged as disinformation. That being said, there is still a lot of fake stuff out there on Twitter, and it's difficult to independently verify without actually going through the steps that you would go through, like on Twitter or with any on Facebook or any other news source. I generally will tell people, the rule of thumb for me is I'll see if a news source has cited it. If it's a news article, I'll see if a second news source has cited it. I kind of use journalism rules in a way, and look for a second source of material, and that'll give me a good idea if something is real or not. But it's still very, very tough, especially when dealing with things like, again, the situation in Ukraine, where the Russian intelligence will routinely be putting out disinformation on social media that's designed to do exactly that, and it gets disseminated on Twitter without anybody really realizing it. That'll happen pretty often, so it's best to do a lot of independent verification either way.
I have a question.
Sure.
You or your organization have set up a Twitter account, and you want to attract followers. How do you go about doing that effectively?
Yeah, the best way to do that is to get involved in the conversations that are going on. So by going into the Explore tab, or by viewing hashtags that are being tweeted in your Twitter feed that you're seeing from accounts that you follow, and then just engaging in conversation, having something to say and saying it with by using that hashtag in your tweet along with your comment, responding and replying on tweets that you see. The more you say, the more exposure your account is going to get, and the more exposure your account gets, the more followers you're going to get. So the best way to do that is to simply engage in the conversation and be open about what you're saying. And if when you're insightful and you have things that you're saying that people are responding to, that will build your following.
Got a hand up, Richie, from Kathy.
Oh, yeah, Kathy.
Yes, I have a question. I have a Twitter account, but advertisements keep popping up there. How do you take that off? How do you take those off? How do you remove what you don't want on your Twitter account? Like, do you get ads and things like that?
Yeah, you will get ads. Those unfortunately will happen either way. And that's one thing you won't be able to get rid of.
Oh.
One good way to at least make the ads bearable is if you are based on the accounts that you follow, there's targeting available to advertisers, so at least the ads will be somewhat relevant to you. That makes it a little bit more bearable if I'm seeing ads from accounts that are at least somewhat relevant to what I'm interested in. Other than that, there's always going to be some ads there, but the more accounts you follow, the more those ads will be dissipated and overtaken in many ways by the content that you're actually supposed to be getting in your Twitter feed from the accounts that you follow. So if you follow more accounts, you're going to notice those ads a lot less because you're taking in a bit more content at any given time.
So if there's an account you don't want to follow anymore, how do you stop following it? How do you do that?
Yeah, so you can follow accounts pretty much as easily as you can unfollow accounts pretty much as easily as you follow them. So if we go into our account and we look at who
You
we're
can hear
following.
me. You can unfollow me.
No, I'm not going to do that. We just followed this account, so I'll just unfollow the same account that I followed. Then you just hit that unfollow button.
Okay.
And we've unfollowed that account. You can
Okay.
also, if you come across accounts that are being abusive to you, or if you see them being abusive to other people,
Mhm.
or purposefully spreading disinformation, you have other tools that you can use. We can mute accounts. If we mute an account, that won't do anything other than prevent us from seeing anything having to do with them.
Okay.
It's not a full-on block. It's just us silencing any mention of them. We can
Okay.
also block an account, which is a bit more of an active step, where you're actively blocking an account and really preventing them from even having a way around that mute function. And you can also, this is good if you see an account being abusive to other accounts, or if someone's being abusive to you, you'll want to report them. You can hit this button. Twitter will ask you why you're reporting them. It could be for spreading fake news. It could be for being abusive to other users. And then if you report them, they'll be muted for you. And then Twitter will also investigate and possibly suspend them or remove them from Facebook. That happened to Emily by accident.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Richie, can you create and talk about just briefly, as it can maybe help with our next Twitter 102 training, creating a group in messages, and then maybe invite everyone from that's attended here tonight to that group, so then we can all stay in touch and uplift each other's tweets and ask questions or follow-ups. That would just be wonderful.
Yeah, totally. I don't have everybody's Twitter feed here, but I would say that if everybody here, once they get their Twitter set up, they could follow us and shoot us a direct message. So you would do that by going to our profile, and then this is our profile, so it's not going to show us a icon to message ourselves, but there would be a button there to send a direct message, and I would see that, and so would Emily and Donald in our messages tab here, and we would be able to set up that group, and we would do that here. So if once we have the followers and people that we want to have a group chat with, it would be in our messages section, and we can create a group and just search for the people that are in there.
Richie, thank you so much. Can everyone who does have a Twitter handle drop it in the chat? I'll be sure to follow y'all at dwigginsj3, trying to get that check mark verified. So just feel free to follow me. Don't have to like my content, put me on mute, but just follow me. Love y'all.
Hey Richie.
Yeah.
How do you okay, I got really kind of lost way back, but I'm looking at your screen and I'm wondering how come I don't see that screen on here?
Which screen is that?
The one you're on, where it has the home, explore, notifications, and all that.
So you're logged into your account now,
Yes.
and what do you see when you log in?
It's just the I guess the thread.
And it's not showing this section here, but it is
No.
showing your.
It's just showing, people tweeting.
Okay. Are you on your
You on
phone?
your phone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why. Yeah, if you're on your phone, that's going to look a little bit different just because of the smaller screen. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there are a couple of, or there should be a couple of buttons down there.
Mhm.
One that looks like a house and another one that looks like a bell.
Yeah.
So those correspond with these sections here.
Oh, okay.
So you'll see like there's probably like a hashtag down there and an envelope. Those will be the same as these on the left side here.
And I don't know, I was so into trying to do this, but did you say how you retweet somebody's post?
Yeah, and it'll be the same if you're on the app on your phone. On every tweet, there's this button here that has these two arrows. If you tap it once, you'll be able to retweet. And then if you you can also have the option to do the quote tweet like I talked about if you want to add your own comment to it.
Oh, okay, cool, thanks.
You have to push and hold if you're on the app to do the quote tweet. I know that because I asked that question like a month ago when I could not figure out how to do it on my.
Yeah, and it's funny because even sometimes like on mine, I'll just kind of show you here on my phone. It actually gives me the option to to tweet or quote tweet. So it depends on what phone you're on and what version of the app. I don't know why it's different, but it's always going to be that same retweet button that looks like two lines with arrows on them.
Or was that an assertion of iPhone superiority there, Richie? Is that what was
Oh
going
no.
Yeah, so I do
would
have
never.
another question with regard to your handle. I guess a two-part question. One would be, if I decide to change my handle from I love Celine Dion to I love Britney Spears, can I do that and preserve all of my feed? And the second question would be, could someone have multiple handles connected to the same email address?
So yeah, those are both very good questions. The first one, yes, you can change your handle, and it wouldn't change your account. It would keep everything intact. It would keep your followers intact. All of the people that you follow would remain intact. As long as that new handle is available, you'll be able to switch it out. With regard to having different handles attached to different to one email, that they won't let you do, but there's a little bit of a hack around it if you use Gmail. Gmail has a function where if you put any word and a plus symbol before your Gmail account, that it acts as a separate email address. So if you wanted to use one Gmail address, and so if I were at like richieLSA@gmail.com, and that's where my personal account lives, but I also have this OFU pack account, I could do OFU pack plus richieLSA@gmail.com, and that's a completely different email address to Twitter, but it's all going to go to the same inbox. It's all going to go to richieLSA@gmail.com.
Shut the front door.
Sometimes I forget that that's not like the common knowledge, and I don't share it. I probably should share that up front or a little bit earlier.
Richie, do you also do like YouTube trainings and how that works? Just FYI, I'm pretty sure everyone in this group, or at least I would like one of those.
Yeah, I do. I use YouTube a lot for brand accounts, and I use it a lot less for I don't really have my own personal content, but I do view a lot of content. So I use YouTube a lot, and I share a lot of content from organizations that I'm working with.
Wow, Richie, this is like better than the ShamWow commercial. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions for Richie? And to sort of piggyback on what Donald was saying and Richie alluded to at the beginning of the meeting, we do plan to continue these trainings and really appreciate OFU PAC lending Richie to us and his expertise on this. So our goal is to have more of these 101s for other social media platforms like YouTube, like Instagram, like TikTok, so we can feel a lot younger than I feel right now. And then more advanced in-depth things. So as we become more confident with using these platforms, and these recordings from these trainings will go up on UJO's YouTube site, and then we'll cross post with OFU PAC. But I'm really excited about all of this happening, and I've learned a lot tonight. I feel like I can post pictures of my cats confidently, so I apologize ahead of time for that. But I'm really excited because we all know that Twitter is a platform, I think, that's preferred by a lot of political type stuff, and certainly a space where, in the context of the Our Voices Together coalition, is a great way for us to get our messaging out and get media on board with knowing what we're doing, letting the legislators know that we're paying attention to what's happening. So I really want to make this an effective thing for us to post our personal stuff, but also to really to use our voices together to really make a difference in the conversation in Ohio. So so again, I'm really grateful to you, Richie, for being here. I will let you have the last word unless we have any other questions coming up.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure, and we're really happy to do it, and we hope that there will be many more. It would be great to kind of share this experience with everybody and be able to get more of your voices out there and heard, because they're voices that need to be heard.
Great. Thank you. Well, with that, I will bid everyone a good evening. Please take care, be well, play around with Twitter, follow each other, and we will start making some change in Ohio and beyond. So thank you. Be well. Good night.